the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder
Collin Hart. Welcome to Founder Secrets. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, Taylor.
This will be fun. So we're going to talk a little real estate, talk a little bit about kind of life optimization and goal setting and how we can all reach the kind of heights that we want, maybe. I don't know. But first we're going to start with an icebreaker. So given that you're not, specifically in kind of like broad commercial real estate, but maybe we can broaden this up a little bit into where each of us are going to say, what's one real estate decision? So it could be buying something, it could be leasing something, it could be a move that changed your business trajectory for better or worse, and why. I do have an answer to this. So I'll start then, Flavia, and then Collin, you'll go. So I owned a marketing agency for 12 years. We had an office in this very old building. It was a 115-year-old building in Kentucky called the Starks Building. It's now abandoned. It's 14 stories tall. It's like 400,000 square feet. It's this giant building. And at the time that we were in it, it also should have been abandoned. The elevators would trap our clients in it. So the lights would turn off in the elevator.
It's a great way to close a client.
And then the elevator... Great way to close a client. Like almost all of our staff were trapped in the elevator at one time or another, or multiple times. The lights would go off. It would shake violently, and then doors would not open. And then eventually it would like recalibrate and then figure out where to go and take you to the wrong floor, which was the other damaging part, because then people thought we were at that floor. We were not. That was probably not a great thing. But then we moved to this also old building. That was an old shoe factory. And that was amazing. We had skylights. We won these awards for office space. And I paid $0 for that because the guy who bought it, young guy, he wanted to do these amazing build outs. And so we had this unbelievable office that's still there. The company that bought mine, I think, still uses it. And so that changed our trajectory, because now people would come in, real elevator, nice building, historic district. So
real elevator, keyword, right?
Yeah.
Not the Tower of Terror anymore.
But yeah, this is free rent?
Exactly. No, it wasn't free rent. It was a free build out. So they paid to do the build out. But my rent was cheaper. The rent went down $1,000 a month. We had a smaller space but yeah, the Starks building, rest in peace. One day they'll demolish it and build something nice there. But now I think it's like condemned. They're not allowed to use it. Flavio, what's your great real estate decision?
The good real estate decision I had was buying this little place in North Carolina early on. And I could barely afford it, but I think it was a huge, huge help to starting a company, because when I wanted to start a company, I actually moved out of that place, rented it out, and I rented with a roommate a much cheaper place. And one didn't completely offset my rent, but it made it so cheap where basically I had nearly zero cost of living, which I think is a big barrier to people starting companies. They think they have. I mean, if you don't have a family, that would be a big one. But if you don't have a family, probably your biggest cost is your house, your rent. And so if you can find ways to mitigate that stress, then you really just have, food, and that, you can minimize that a lot. So now, at least for me, it was ability to give me enough runway to feel I can start a company without as much stress and pressure to take a job if things aren't working out. What about you, Collin?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that's a really liberating story, Flavio. My icebreaker opener, or like, what's the biggest real estate decision you've made that's made an impact on your life, kind of relates to that. And I wouldn't necessarily draw it to one specific instance, but I think the advice I give people is like, buy real estate, invest in real estate. You're going to thank yourself for it later, because Flavio, to your point, it pays dividends. And if you're having a hard time and you have cash flowing real estate, it'll help support your life and your income. But if I'm trying to draw to a specific instance, I worked for a big real estate investment company, and I was like kind of earlier in my career. And all along the way, I had been making small investments in buildings or deals. We call them deals in the real estate world. And so this one year, we sold 2 of the buildings that I had invested in, and I made more on my small investment in that year than I did in my entire salary. And I'm like, dude, I'm out of here. And so I left, right? And that's when I moved to Southern California. And so I would just say, even if you don't have a lot of money, if you can figure out a way to invest in real estate, and it shouldn't be speculative, it should be, a good investment, think about it, make sure it's a sound decision, but it can really set you up correctly.
What I like about your business, well, I like a lot of things about it, but what I like about it is that I love businesses today that are very niche, that are like very specific, not just on like who the customer is, but you're solving a very specific problem for a very specific customer, and you kind of like know who those people are, you know how to speak to them. So what does the business do today? Who do you sell to? What's the problem you kind of solve?
So I appreciate that. I mean, I feel like everybody should have a niche-y business, or at least know who they sell to, right? So our company is a commercial real estate brokerage and advisory firm. It's ERE Healthcare Real Estate. And what we do is specialize in working with physicians who own their real estate, and we help them strategize on their real estate. So if I'm to distill that, really what we do is we make money selling buildings for doctors, right? But we do so much more leading up to that process. And there are a lot of physicians who own buildings, right? Like you go to the dermatologist, you go to the gastroenterologist, the orthopedic surgeon, whatever. Hopefully you don't go see those guys too often. But if you do, you might go into a building and there's a likelihood, depending on your geography, in Kentucky for sure, in New York City, maybe not, that those doctors own their buildings. So that is our customer or our client, generally is physician groups who own their building.
Let me make sure I understand this, because I feel like I've come across this in healthcare a little bit, in that if I'm a doctor and I sell my practice, I'm getting older, I still want to work a few years, but I want to cash out. And these large health systems around are gobbling up all the little doctors. And so
they are.
Maybe you can correct me. I've always wanted to know how this is structured. And here's what I think is structured, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I think what's happening is the doctor sells for some like small, relative, like nominal, or like some amount that's maybe not the full capture of the value. They stay employed to the health system at like a pretty meager like salary. So like on paper seems like kind of a bad deal, but then they own the building. And so they lease the building to the health system at like an astronomical rate. And so that's how like they make really the money from the acquisitions, through this leasing back to the people that bought them for a few years while they're just kind of punching the clock. Maybe I'm being a little too cynical here, but maybe you can help me
you're in the
it.
right direction. So there's some key details that are not correct, which is okay because you don't do this.
No, tell me. I want to
know. And we'll correct them because I want to make sure people know and understand it. But here's how it works. So let's say you're a doctor, you own your practice, right? First of all, you started out, you got out of med school, got out of residency, and now you're going to work at a practice, right? So you're a young doctor, you have high medical school debt, you want to move somewhere and you're going to buy a new home, and you have a demanding wife because you haven't been spending any money or any time with your wife. So now like you got to, right? And so you go to some job, it could be with a hospital, it could be with an independent practice, and you're employed, right? And you make several $100,000s a year, at least as a specialist. And the idea is that you eventually are going to work up to become a partner in that practice. Okay. So let's say I'm a dermatologist. So eventually I'm going to be able to buy into the practice entity, right? Like the operation. And so I'm doing well, and my other partners around me are doing well. And at some point we say, you know what? We have this extra income, or we take Collin's advice, or we listen to Flavio's story and say, hey, we want to own real estate too. And so the doctors then go to buy a building, right? And so they're buying a building for a couple reasons. They're buying a building to, number one, invest in real estate, but maybe more important than that, in order to control the destiny of their practice. So like if you've ever rented an apartment or an office or whatever, you know that you're kind of beholden to your landlord. And so if you can just own your home, like your work home, then that feels good. So now how is that set up? So I own my practice in one entity. I own my real estate in another entity. And so what I'm going to do is just pay myself rent, right? So I'm taking rent, or I'm taking profit out of my pocket from the practice, and I'm paying it to the real estate as rent. You guys follow that?
Yep.
So at any point, I can sell my building and continue to operate in the building as a renter. But for the time being, I'm just going to rent from myself and pay rent to my real estate entity. So Flavio, to your question, if somebody sells their practice, like I'm a 65-year-old physician, and I think that's the average retirement age of physicians in the US is 65. So I'm a 65-year-old doctor. I want to retire. So here's the correction I want to make. usually when a practice is sold, it's not for some nominal value, at least if it's not done correctly. So I believe both of you guys have exited businesses and maybe you sold, hopefully, for some multiple of earnings. So in the healthcare world, it's the same, right? If you have a business that's set up with recurring revenue that's not solely dependent on you, then there's an opportunity for you to sell for a multiple of earnings or EBITDA. Usually the hospital will not buy for that. They can't call it that. They'll call it like, hey, we're paying asset value, or we're going to pay asset plus goodwill. But for a lot of private equity consolidation, which is happening in healthcare, they buy for a multiple of earnings. So there's plenty of deals that are huge, right? Some are $1 million, some are $100 million. And so I don't know which doctor you're going to, but he should sell for more than just asset value, right? So now let's talk about the lease part. So if I own my practice, right, and I own my real estate, and I'm paying rent to myself, I can pay whatever rent I want, right? And I'm probably going to do that in order to set it up to be the most tax efficient. Like I'm going to go to my CPA and say, hey, how much rent expense is okay for me to charge and write off? And that's what I'm going to set my rent to. When I now sell my practice to the hospital or to some private equity platform, now rent actually has to be fair market value. Even more so with the hospital. Hospitals are ultra finicky and sensitive to doing anything that could be perceived as like a regulatory risk. And so overpaying doctors for rent or overpaying doctors for anything else is against the law, like it's illegal. So it's perceived as a kickback. And so there are anti-kickback requirements or laws that have to be followed. So they're not necessarily going to jack up the rent and charge some crazy rent, but they could have this opportunity where like, hey, I'm going to get rent from somebody else and I don't have to work here anymore. And so that piece of what you said is totally right. And so that's kind of the world we play in, is like doctors who are figuring out their succession plan. We don't sell practices, but we're integrally involved in those on kind of the periphery as relates to real estate. So we get to know about it. And then we just handle the real estate stuff, which, by the way, a lot of times people say, well, I've owned my building for 20 years and I know about real estate and I'm a multimillionaire doctor and I don't need to listen to you. And that's when things get messed up.
Why do you think the hospital can't pay a multiple of EBITDA? Is it because they're a nonprofit and they have to?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a nonprofit thing. They are, again, it goes back to the regulatory framework. And so there's something called Stark Law, which relates to like anti-kickback and not overpaying for services. Because remember, a lot of healthcare in the United States is paid for by the government as Medicare, right? So now it's public money. And so it's highly regulated because of that. So hospitals just get pretty finicky or sensitive as relates to making sure things are fair market value because they don't want to trip any Stark Law, which could jeopardize their ability to be paid by the US government as Medicare.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does make sense, though. You see a lot more practices getting sold to hospitals than private equity.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wondering, like, why do you think they're taking a potentially lower number? Like, why aren't they selling the building to the hospital? Is it the physician doesn't want to sell the building because they view that as a potential money stream from the health system?
Yeah, good question. This is pretty technical stuff. So I like that you're following it. So here's the deal. So hospitals and other operating businesses, it does not tend to be a good use of their capital to own real estate. So Flavio, you were saying, hey, like when I owned my house in North Carolina, it was great because it provided some cash flow for me. Well, hospitals or other businesses, it could be like a pharmacy, it could be a fast food restaurant, it could be an auto parts store. They make money operating their business, and you guys are in different businesses, so you know your margins. But, you know, in some healthcare businesses, the EBITDA margins can be 30, 40%, right? On retail businesses, it might be, 5 to 15%. And so if you're making that kind of margin on your business, I'm making a 10% return or 20 or 30% return on my business. But in real estate, I'm just kind of banking on the appreciation. It's not necessarily appreciating every year. Well, I'd way rather deploy my money into my operating business that is my expertise than dump millions of dollars into a building. Does that make sense? Even though there could be like major appreciation, that's just not what they're set up to do, you know?
But it also sounds like the doctor doesn't want to sell the building. Is that right?
Well, so let's talk about our business model. So the reason that we're in business is to sell buildings, although there's a lot of work that goes into getting somebody to that point. And so my value proposition to physicians who own their building is like, look, you bought your building because you wanted to control the destiny of your practice. Now, Flavio said, hey, you're getting old, so you should sell your practice. So then you sell your practice. Well, the whole reason you bought your building was to control the destiny of your practice, but you don't own your practice anymore. So why do you own that building? And so it completely changes the dynamic or really the risk profile of the investment because look, you own the practice, you own the building, you kind of control everything, right? Like you control both sides of the table. But now if you sell your practice, and this happens a lot, like you sell to private equity, well, private equity is in the business of growing and creating better margins, creating more EBITDA or reducing costs, right? And so if I'm a private equity backed healthcare company and I have an office here and then I have an office 2 blocks away, I might say, you know what, let's consolidate these. And so if you own one of those buildings and you're a doctor, you're kind of screwed, right? So I'm not saying that private equity is going around and closing all the buildings. And I'm not saying hospitals are doing that either. What I'm saying is that when you're not in control of the decision making on the operational side, it's totally different than when you did, and it creates more risks in your investment. You follow that?
Yeah. So last question. Sorry, I'm going so deep on this. Yeah,
it's all right.
So you're helping these doctors sell their buildings once they're out of the business to private equity, mostly, like to other investors.
Not to private equity. So private equity generally, at least the kind of private equity you're referring to, does not buy real estate. So what we're doing is just like there's a world of investors who buy operating businesses, whether it be healthcare or technology or anything, right? There's a whole universe of investors who buy real estate. And so those could be REITs, like a real estate investment trust, which I'm sure you guys have money in REITs in some form. It could be real estate private equity funds, which are funds set up just to buy real estate. Could be family offices. It could be high net worth individuals. There's so much real estate ownership, obviously. And so what we do is we act as a conduit between the physician world and the investor world. And so we're selling buildings into that institutional investment world of real estate.
Like, is there an agreement with the people in that building that the rent's gonna stay the same for a while? Or do you see, like if I'm a REIT, what you don't call private equity, but let's some buyer of this, wouldn't I just buy the building and double the rent because I know the hospital can afford it?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So part of what makes our whole world go around is leases. And so, if you rent an apartment, how long's your lease?
1 year.
12 or 15 months. When you lease a freestanding medical building, 5, 10, 20, 50,000 square feet, you're investing a lot into that space, right? So Taylor, you mentioned your landlord like built out the building, right? Which is unusual. Usually a tenant would spend money on that. And so you're spending your money to build out this space. So there's no way I'm going to only sign a 12 or 15 month lease. As a tenant, I want a 5, 10, 15 year lease. And so Flavio, a big part of what we do is structure the leases correctly, not only to protect the practice that's going to continue operating there so they can't get kicked out, so their rent can't be doubled, but at the same time, having a long-term lease creates certainty for the investor because the lease governs the rental cash flow. So now they're willing to pay a more premium value for it because they say, look, I can depend on this cash flow. It's almost more like a bond than a piece of real estate in the sense that the cash flow is the same. I can forecast it every year. It might go up a little bit each year, but not significantly, maybe 2 or 3%. And so now I feel really good because I have this guaranteed stream of cash flow that's going up a little bit. And I have a long-term lease with, to your point, the hospital. So I feel really good about getting my rent. So I can pay a big multiple for that asset.
You know what I like about this is that we have a lot of tech people on this show, and what we're talking about here is not tech. But I would argue that the average person who has an ability to work in tech, or they could work in real estate, or they could work in medicine, or what have you, might make more money in real estate, or if you specialize, like if you do some of what you're talking about.
Sure.
And so I say that because if someone's a younger person and they're listening to this and maybe they don't know what they want to do, they just want to do something where they can make money or make a difference, all those pseudonyms that we use, but really they're looking for what's a way that I can learn something, go really, really deep, and I know who the customers are. And I'm not saying this to make competition for you. I'm saying
Fine.
it's because I think
We welcome it.
well, I think these are good lessons for people who are younger, who are thinking, like, there are so many of these very niche-y, like, just go, like, the way that you're just rapid firing you obviously talk about this stuff all day to a very specific customer base that really appreciates it, and no one else even knows what it is, right?
Correct.
So, can you speak to like how you got to this? Like, how did you even figure out that this was a business model that would work? And how would you recommend someone else who's not looking for that, but they're looking for like some equivalent? How would you identify, ooh, that's the market I want to be in?
Sure. So I'll be honest with you. I kind of fell into it. Okay. So I started more broadly in the world of real estate. And look, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I don't know about you guys, but I talk to younger people all the time and they're like, yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, dude, me too. So it's going to be okay. Number one, right? It's a journey. Focus on the journey, not the end result. First of all, Flavio, I told you I went to school in North Carolina. I grew up in North Carolina. So I went to school there for 2 years. Top of my class, or excuse me, not top of my class. I was
bottom
like,
of your class.
Yeah, not bottom, but middle of my class, but trying to figure out like, what am I doing? Right. And so people that I worked with or people that I went to school with, it's like, they were going to be engineers or like an architect or an accountant, like standard kind of stuff. And so I just wasn't inspired by that. And so I found myself looking for an internship in June. So I don't know about you guys, but I think that's kind of late to look for an internship. Nobody told me that, but I learned that. And so I'm at a family reunion and I run into a cousin of mine and he's like, hey, so what are you interested in? I'm like, I don't know. I'm in school. I'm a sophomore. I'm getting ready to start summer. I'm looking for an internship. He's like, well, cool. We own a real estate business in Florida. You should come intern with us. And I'm like, okay. So I moved down to Florida for the month of July that year between my sophomore and junior year, and I was interning with them. So they own a bunch of shopping centers. And so during the day, I'm learning all about the shopping center business. So this is how do we manage shopping centers? How do we talk to the tenants? How do we lease new space? Whatever, right? And in the evenings, he was mentoring me and asking me the questions of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Who inspires you? How much money do you want to make? What do you enjoy in life? And I don't know if people have asked you guys those questions, but I find that nobody ever asked me those questions before. And that's a hard topic for a lot of people to discuss, is like the future, right? So I got a lot out of that experience. And I went back up to school. I was living in the fraternity house, not the bottom of my class, middle of my class. And I'm like, you know what? I learned more in that month that I was working with them than in my first 2 years of university. Seriously. So I dropped my classes. I moved down to Florida and I kept working in the business. And so remember, median student. Now I lost a year of credits when I moved down to Florida. And so I'm still destined to graduate within 4 total years. So I really stepped it up in school and I was motivated now. I'm like, hey, I know what I'm working towards. I want to be in the real estate business. I need to get through this. I need to stand out. So I finished 3 years of credits in 2 years. So I still graduated in 4 years. And now I graduated in the top of my class. So I graduated magna cum laude, which it's not about the grades. It's about, I was serious about it and I was engaged in it, right? That's what it's about. Forget about the grades. So
in Florida,
I finished and he said, in Florida. Yeah. So he said, you know what? I'm going to move out to Vegas with my family. And why don't you come out and we'll work together? And I said, amazing. So moved out to Las Vegas. This is in 2007, 2008. And
great time to be in real estate.
Great time to be in real estate. Although it was totally fine for us, right? So we were well capitalized. We were looking at assets. We were trying to buy properties. And so we morphed into a different area of real estate, which is single tenant real estate. So I'm going to get back to your question, but we need to get to it. So we were in the shopping center business. Now we're buying single tenant. So that's fast food restaurants, drugstores, gas stations, auto parts stores, anything where you drive by it and it's like a Burger King or a CVS or an Advance Auto Parts. Those are all single tenant properties. So Every one of those buildings is owned by somebody, not by the company, right? It's owned by some real estate guy or company. So now we weren't only limited to buying assets in Florida because single tenant properties are pretty management light. You have a lease, you have one tenant, and so that tenant pays the rent, pays the property taxes, pays for the maintenance, takes care of the building. So your job as a landlord is to collect rent, which is pretty good, right? We bought a lot of properties. So from 2009 to 2013, we bought like $100 million of real estate all over the country. So I got a ton of experience in that world. Unfortunately, as I was learning and growing, I'm coming to realize like, look, I'm never going to own any of this. What am I doing here? Right. And so that goes back to my icebreaker of like, invest in real estate. Right. And I had not been. So I ended up leaving and I moved to upstate New York, which Flavio, I know that's really close to you, practically sort of same as the city, right? And
Feels
so,
the same.
Yeah, same. So I worked for a big REIT or a real estate investment trust up there that bought single tenant properties. So we bought retail properties, which is like the fast food, restaurants, drugstores. We bought industrial properties. So that's manufacturing, distribution centers. And then we bought medical properties. So that's the area I focus in now. So why do I focus in that? When we were buying medical properties, we were mostly buying them from doctors. Doctors are ultra smart and great at what they do. We found that they did not have good representation on the real estate side, and they were getting taken advantage of. Not necessarily by us, just by intermediaries in the business. And so we were getting the best deals on medical properties. So I'm like, there's an opportunity here. And so translated that. So I was on the buy side. So then moved to the sell side, right? So now we work, on behalf of sellers and started advising physicians, I think back in like, 2016, 2015 on how to optimize and monetize their real estate. So it's been a little bit of a journey, right? But we've gradually gotten more specialized and really know our customer, which is awesome.
Can I back up a second? Some of these terms, like people hear and you don't know what they are. This idea of like triple net lease, right? Which I think is what you were just referring to. I think,
but I didn't say that.
So let's say that someone has some cash, right? They have some cash to deploy and they could potentially buy a building. Maybe they buy a Starbucks or they buy, to your point, Burger King doesn't own their real estate. I know it's not exactly in your space, but
know all about it though.
Can you share a little bit more about why does Starbucks not own their building and who does own it? And like, what is the benefit if you wanted to own a Starbucks or something like that?
Yeah. So Starbucks doesn't own their buildings for the reason we talked about, which is they make way more money. I mean, you can look in their 10K, but their margins on selling coffee has got to be huge, right? So if I'm going to make 50% margins, I don't know, but I'm just guessing. If I'm going to make 50% margins on selling coffee, why in the world am I going to buy real estate that's going to make a 6, 7, 8% return, right? And not only that, I can buy coffee and sell coffee all day. And I can turn that over and it's liquid. No pun intended. Yeah, no pun intended. But real estate, it's like, it's an illiquid asset. I can't get my money out of it. It's tied up. So that's the main reason Starbucks doesn't own their buildings. And McDonald's does own some of their real estate. And there are some retailers that do own it. But a lot of companies have moved to an asset light model where they say, look, we want to unload these assets that are illiquid. And we just want to focus on our core business because that's where we make money, right? So let's talk about triple net leases. So you described it correctly, Taylor. A triple net lease means that I am the landlord, I own the building, and I lease it to the tenant. The tenant's responsibility under the lease is to pay for the property taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. So those are the three nets: taxes, insurance, maintenance, triple net, three nets. And so if you are just a landlord or a guy looking for some extra income, you can buy a building leased to Starbucks. It might be like $2 million, right? So Taylor, we live in the same city. And so there's Starbucks around us. Maybe those Starbucks are $3 million just because we're in Southern California, right? But the point is you can go out and buy one and you can get a mortgage to buy it and you can collect the cash flow. So would you say Starbucks is a big company or a small company?
Huge company.
Okay. Do you feel like they probably pay their bills?
Yes.
Me too. So if you're a landlord, do you think that you're probably likely to get your rent every month from Starbucks?
I hope so. Yes.
I agree. So would you classify that as a low risk investment?
I think so.
Me too. So with a low risk investment, do you get a high return or a low return?
Bad return.
Low return. So if I'm buying a Starbucks, I might get like a maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5% return on my money. So
That's it.
That's it.
You get better in treasuries.
Might as well buy treasuries. By the way, you can sell treasuries the next day, right?
Right.
And so they're a liquid asset, right? So that doesn't sound very interesting in terms of buying a Starbucks, but people do it all day, all the time because their return requirements are 4 or 5%, right? That's fine. Or they have other reasons that they want to buy it. On the flip side, in medical real estate, a lot of times we work with smaller practices where it's like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 doctors, right? So there's a lot of key man risk in there. And look, even if one doctor gets hit by a bus, that's a bad day for the practice, right? Even if there's 10 doctors there, right? And so there's more risk associated with that. But the flip side is that, look, medical is an essential business. Everybody needs healthcare. It's not going away. It feels very stable. And so from that standpoint, there's plenty of people who are willing to invest in the medical space. But if you're not leasing it to a hospital and instead you're leasing to a physician group, you ought to get a higher return. So in our world, a lot of times the returns are 6, 7, 8%. So you can see that it's significantly higher than a lot of the credit tenants. That's what we'll classify like Starbucks as. But if we just look at this entire universe, all of these assets trade under something called a triple net lease, which means my job as a landlord is to collect rent. Your job as a tenant is to pay for everything else. And there's all different flavors of that too. People just say, hey, it's triple net, but you have to really read the words in the lease. And that's what we do a lot. That's kind of the world we specialize in. So a lot of nuance there, Taylor. We're way in real estate niche land.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Learned so much. This is great. So, I want to switch gears a little bit to productivity because I know you have some tips on how to kind of focus, be productive, and that can benefit everyone.
So look, I'll share something with you guys, but I want something out of this too, right? So I'm gonna look for your productivity tips. But here's what I tell everybody on our team, and I tell myself, I have to remind myself every day, is that motivation is fleeting. So some days I'm excited, some days I'm not feeling great, but my goals are the same, right? And so I do not rely on motivation to get me anywhere, right? Maybe even to get out of bed. I'm like, doesn't matter if I feel good or not, I have to get out of bed. So what do I rely on is I rely on consistency and discipline, which sounds so boring and old school. It's not for the tech people, but that's what it is, right? It's like, and I'm a real estate guy, so I err towards those old school mentalities, but I rely on consistency every day. So I get up at the same time every day. I have the same morning routine. I'm working out consistently during the week. I read my goals daily. I practice my Spanish daily, Flavio and Taylor. And so, that is a key to success and productivity for me is don't rely on if you feel good or not. Your goals are there. What are the small steps you can take every day in order to get to them and just do it, right? And so you will get to your goals whether you feel good or not versus relying on, oh, I feel great today. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go 1,000 miles an hour. And then the next week you do nothing. So that's my like productivity hack, which is not even a big secret. It's like kind of OG productivity, you know?
Actually doing it, I think, is the hardest, right?
Yeah, we all want to do that. It's just like, maybe what did you do to convince yourself to do it from before you didn't? Like, I love the story around a mentor. I think that's great. You had that mentor that really seems like it shifted your trajectory. Yeah. Was there a similar mentor or moment that got you like, all right, from this day on, I will follow this discipline to the T?
Well, nobody's perfect and we're all human. There's a book that I'll recommend to you guys called Think and Grow Rich. Have you ever heard of that? Maybe
I've never read it.
Wait, no?
I've never read it. I've heard of it.
I think so.
I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Colin is devastated.
Oh my God.
Oh, Napoleon Hill.
So it's a Napoleon Hill book and it is the classic self-help productivity book. And so in that book, there are 13 principles, which Taylor, I'm going to bring you a copy of it. It's like,
All right.
I'm
great.
embarrassed. I mean, it's all
You're
good.
embarrassed for me.
We'll get you there. But it's really about the goal setting and visualization and just, I would say just like doing it, you know? So I'm curious to hear from both of you guys, you said, hey, it's about doing it. Do you not feel like you are motivated to wake up every morning? Do you have goals that you're working towards? Do you remind yourself of those goals? Are you like, I'm curious.
No. I mean, for me, well, I guess, yes, like I have business goals, but I kind of like share those with my business partners. And so we talk about those things a lot. And so definitely in that part of my life. But I think I fail at the kind of personal goal. Some of these things, so maybe I need to read this book. Maybe this book will change. Like the workouts are not consistent. I am the person you were just talking about. Like if I feel great, I'm going to go to the gym. Oh, I'm a little tired today. Oh, my back hurts a little bit. And then I don't go. And then I don't like myself for not going. So it sounds like I need to read this book, and it's going to change my life.
Flavio, what do you eat for lunch?
Sweet green.
Every day?
Pretty much. I have a custom order. This is the perfect order. What do you eat for lunch?
I would say, well, that's not my question. I would say that to me is the beginning of consistency, right? And so a lot of people, if you can eat the same thing every day for lunch, and I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I do that, right? And so the reason I do that is because, look, you guys are business owners. You know what it's like in the world. I have 1,000 things tugging at me that I have to make a decision on right now or yesterday. And so the fewer things I can think about or make a decision on, the better. And so I'm just like, hey, I get my lunch every day. I know exactly what I'm getting. I don't even have to think about it. So to me, that's the foundation of, hey, I'm going to be consistent because I'm already disciplined in eating lunch, which I eat the same thing every day, which a lot of people are like, I could never do that. I'm like, I don't know.
What do you eat? What is it?
I eat a salad from a local chicken restaurant, which I'll take you to sometime.
All right.
It's really good.
Same salad. I mean, Flavio eats what is it? Salmon and chicken.
Yeah,
What's in there, Flavio? It's like,
just like
you
a
guys
healthy
might have-
salad. Yeah. It's not upscale or fancy. It doesn't matter. It's a salad with chicken on it, you know? So what about you, Taylor? What do you eat for lunch?
Oh
Different
man,
every day?
I have not eaten lunch today.
Whoa.
It is 2 p.m. Pacific.
I ate lunch 3 hours ago.
My wife's not here. She's in Seattle. So when my wife is not in town, life becomes chaos. I forget to eat. I forget to feed our dog. Things fall, they shatter pretty quickly. My building where I live on Fridays throws a grill day. So they grill outside and it smells really good. And they text us about it. And so usually on Fridays I will go outside.
You're headed down there.
Yeah. And that's probably what I'll end up doing. But I want to be more disciplined. So this is good. I think his book's going to change my life.
I hope so. It changed mine. And then I would also say, so Flavio, do you have goals written down?
We have business goals and I have some general personal goals, but I find that focusing too much on the goals takes away from me being present, every moment, because then it's constantly about like, whoa, what's the next thing that's going to give me? Well, this thing's not, I got to do this other thing. And then I got to do this thing. So I think, and of course, having no goals isn't great either. Although I would lean more towards having no goals because I've had a lot of goals over the years. And I think these days I'm leaning more towards like a no goal, staying present. I'm reading The Power of Now again because I think I'm wired more to like work and like achieve goals. So if I like dial that down a little bit and dial up more like awareness and present, it works better for me. So I could get easily addicted to goals. So then I kind of try to stay away from it. I try not to keep ice cream around too much. I try not to keep goals in my head around too much either,
Goals are your ice cream. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yes. They're not ice cream to me. So that's
me either.
That's the only reason.
Well, no, when I'm thinking about goals, because you're right, achieving goals is an ice cream, and the discipline, I definitely agree with that. But I think it's like goal porn is a thing. I think we're like, oh my God, like if we were making $1 billion, our BHAG would be so awesome. Let's think about our BHAG some more. Like, I don't think that's particularly helpful.
Yeah. So I think I'm with you on that. I mean, I have a BHAG and I'm focused on it, but not every single second of every single day, but like, let me give you two of my goals and tell me if you feel like this is overwhelming, right? So two personal goals that I have for this year are ride in a 100-mile bike race, which Taylor already knows about this. And then the other one is become proficient in Spanish by practicing 5 days per week. And so for the bike race, like if I didn't remind myself of that every day, it would be December and I wouldn't do it. Right. And it's like, I have to focus on it every so often and remind myself in order to not get motivated, but in order to just like get there. Right. And then same thing with the Spanish. It's like, hey, I remind myself that I wrote down that goal and I read it every morning. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to do my Spanish today. Right. So it's not that I'm ultra focused on that. Like if I don't do my Spanish, will life go on? Yeah, totally. But this is the discipline or consistency that I build into my life to get my life to where I want it to be. And I don't need $1 billion, right? That's not my goal, right? And I do think a lot of people might characterize goals as like some lofty thing. It doesn't have to be lofty. Another one of my goals is have a date night with my wife once a month. Another one is go on a family walk at least once per week. These are not like crazy. It's just like, hey, I want to remind myself these things are important to me. And if I'm too unstructured, I'm not going to do these things. So that's what works for me, right? Which is not for everybody.
I love this idea of like reminders and have it in writing. All right, let's move to hacks. Like we've been kind of in this space for the last few minutes. But so the life hack is one thing that has improved your life or changed your life and could be shared with others. I will start. So I have an Apple Watch. A lot of people have Apple Watches. My hack is this: use the reminder function of the Apple Watch in voice mode very specifically. What do I mean by that? So I mean that I bring my backpack into a restaurant. I'm in New York, I carry a backpack everywhere. So I don't want to forget. I've forgotten my backpack. Flavio's been with me when I've forgotten my backpack at a bar or restaurant or something. And so now I just hold the Siri on my phone and I say, remind me when I leave here to check for my backpack. That's all you have to say. And it knows where you are and it figures everything out. And when I walk out the door, I get a push, if my wrist vibrates and says, check for my backpack. And I mark it as done. I probably set, 5 reminders a day. My wife's out of town right now. So I tell it, remind me every morning at 8 a.m. to feed bagel. Remind me every day at 5 p.m. feed bagel. And so there's all these things, or it's like, oh crap, I need to get that thing out of my car. Or when I get home, I need to, here's a good one. We have a roof rack on my car and I drive my bike to go, mountain biking or something. If I drive back and drive into my garage with the mountain bike on my car, it will destroy the car.
That's a bad day. Yeah.
That's a really bad day.
Yeah.
So one that I always do with that is I say, remind me when I get home to take the mountain bike off the cart. Now, you might say when you're at home, it's already too late. No. The geofence is a little wider. So it reminds me as I'm pulling up to my home. So it's just things like that. Like I use it constantly. Or if I'm talking to somebody and they remind me of something, I'll say, remind me in the morning to look at da-da-da. Remind me in the morning to text Collin that thing. And I use it constantly. And I just use it as a way to get something out of my head. Or it's like, oh crap, I got to remember that. And so for anybody who has Apple Watch, I highly encourage you to use it in that way. The reminder function is outstanding. Like just use it as your little computer. That's my hack. What about you, Flavio?
Do you use AirTags?
Yeah, I have tons of them.
I think for the backpack, I use that for the backpack thing to make sure I remember to not forget it somewhere. But as a hack for productivity, I've been using Superhuman, the email client, for the last 5 years.
How is that?
And it's always been good, but it's gotten even better with AI that now we've required everybody on our team to use it. It really does give you like a super power. They recently got bought by Grammarly, so it might get worse. But right now, it is so good because AI will automatically draft all follow-ups for emails you send if the person doesn't respond. And that I realized that takes a lot of mind space for me sending emails, and especially in sales, being like, oh, well, did this person get it? Did they get? And then if they didn't get it, I have to look back. Well, what do we say? Like, what should I say in the follow-up? And that adds up to a lot of time. With AI, it literally takes a second. So I swear I've gone from maybe 2 hours of being on my email a day to 20 minutes. And it's just freed up so
Wow.
much of my time.
Yeah, I feel like I
I've been
need
using it
that.
for a lot of years. And I'd only realized it when my co-founder wasn't using it. And I realized, like, dude, why aren't you following up all this stuff? And he's like, well, I've got like hundreds of emails. I can't follow up with all. And I just realized that, like, wow, there's like a huge difference between using regular email and having an AI assistant drafting all your emails and following up.
It feels like we're in the tech space as far as hacks. So I'm going to keep on that trend. A game changer in my life is our 8 Sleep, which is the bed cooler. So I don't know if you guys have seen that or read about it or have it, but it's amazing. And so we've probably had it for like 4 or 5 years. And I don't want to say it's hard for me to sleep in other places because I do travel a lot. But when I get home and I crank my bed temperature down and my sheets are just like cool all night, it is amazing. So that's my recommendation on that. It's like a sleep hack.
8 Sleep. All right. That's
I'll send you a referral code.
yeah, because it's not cheap, right? Like it's like
Couple grand, yeah. I mean,
okay.
how can you put a price on good sleep?
There you go.
Huh,
You should. That's Flavio's in. Just
All right.
But by the way, so as you mentioned, Grammarly bought Superhuman, and now they're talking about renaming Grammarly into Superhuman. Like that's the founders are talking on Twitter about that right now, which would be quite a heck. But 8 Sleep, go get one. Was sponsoring today's pod through Collin's referral code. Collin, this is great. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Flavio,
Thanks,
great
man.
to meet you. Taylor, great to see you.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down.